Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging Executive Search for Your Career Advancement, which is exclusively for students and alumni from Yale School of Management as part of the Bluesteps Global Business School Alliance Programme. Bluesteps is partnered with over 60 of the world's leading business schools as part of this programme, including your own, and we're delighted that you could all join us today. To introduce myself, my name is Lisa Wales and I am the Director of Bluesteps Partnerships and host of today's webinar. Before we get started, I know that a number of you who are joining us today are new to both Bluesteps and what AESC is as well. So we thought it'd be advantageous to just give a quick summary of both of those entities so that we all are aware before we get going. So just to kind of give a bit of a recap, AESC is the Association of Executive Search and Leadership Consultants. So essentially it's the global association that represents the industry of executive search and leadership consulting. And in order to join AESC, search firms must pass our rigorous quality and ethical standards. So this ensures that as a candidate, you know if you work with an AESC member firm or individual consultant, you are working with one of the most top quality recruiters in the world, which also includes our expert panel today. So what is Bluesteps? AESC also own and operate a candidate career service called Bluesteps. Through our unique connection with the AESC member community, we're able to offer career intel, insights and support that you just can't get anywhere else, directly from the recruiter community. So if you'd like to join Bluesteps, you can do so today with an exclusive 30% discount as part of the Yale community offering, which is Yale SOM 30. So just input that at checkout. Now, alternatively, if you'd like to learn more about Bluesteps and whether it's right for you, please feel free to email me at lwales@aesc.org. We will be sending an email shortly, which will include today's recording, so you are able to listen back if you're not able to make notes quick enough, and you can listen back on demand for as long as you'd like to as well. So moving on with today's discussion, we have a really interesting session planned that we're quite excited to show everyone. Today's speakers are industry thought leaders from the executive search community, and they are ready to share their expertise on how to leverage the industry to further your career. So if you do have questions for the panel, please submit them to the Q&A box, and we'll take most of our questions during the end of the session as well. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator and your career coach for working professionals, Cindy. Over to you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you in advance to our panelists and for everyone who's actually joining today as part of their own career development, taking this hour to really focus on learning about something that could be very powerful for your ongoing success and advancement. Again, that is the topic for today, leveraging executive search for career advancement in 2022 and beyond. And we have a panel of fabulous experts, and I'm just going to introduce them quite quickly. I will start not in order, but with Kathy Vituro, who is with Russell Reynolds. Kathy is in fact an alum of the Yale School of Management, so we're particularly excited that she's joined us today. We have Scott Atkinson, who is a partner at Heidrick & Struggles. Nisa Dillon Brown, who is with Diversified Search and Alto Partners. And last but not least, Ken Rich, who is here in Connecticut also, and he is with Boyden. So with that, I would love to invite our panelists to begin to introduce themselves. Perhaps let's go in the order that they're on the screen: Scott, then Nisa, then Kathy, then Ken. And once we've done our brief introductions, we'll dive into some questions that we've already thought of that we want to discuss. And then, as Lisa said, at the end of our kind of more planned discussion, we do definitely want to bring in questions from the audience. So if you would populate those when they come up for you in the Q&A, I'll be keeping an eye on those through the session. So Scott, if you would like to dive in and introduce yourself briefly, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Lisa. My name is Scott Atkinson, and first I just wanted to express my appreciation to Bluesteps and Cindy and the Yale School of Management for the opportunity to sit alongside Anissa and Kathy and Ken, who are phenomenal consultants in our industry. And also, obviously, thank everyone in the audience for joining us, because without you, this doesn't happen. Just a little bit on my background. As Cindy mentioned, I'm a partner with Heidrick & Struggles. I co-lead our firm's global sustainability practice and ESG practice, where I've had the good fortune of working with clients such as the IFC, Engine Number One, Jane Goodall Institute, Patagonia, National Geographic, the list goes on. And then before this role, I was leading our global venture capital practice for the firm. I should also mention, I recently graduated with a master's myself in environmental science and policy from Hopkins, so I'm all too familiar with what it feels like to be balancing your professional careers, your educational pursuits, and also just life with family and friends and other things. And very excited to be speaking with an institution like Yale, whose goals of educating leaders for both business and society really lends itself well to the mission of our sustainability practice.
Great. I guess good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. As Scott said, thank you to AESC and Bluesteps and of course the Yale School of Management and Cindy for bringing us all together and having a chance to have a vibrant conversation with all you as you begin to think about your next steps once you get your master's at Yale School of Management. So wonderful to be here. I am a managing director partner with Diversified Search Group in our Atlanta office. And have been with Diversified Search in the healthcare practice and nonprofit practice for almost 7 years. I've been doing search for 16 years. Started at a small boutique firm here in Atlanta where I had an opportunity to really get my feet wet into search and found I had a passion in it and have been doing it ever since. Prior to joining Diversified Search Group and my other search experience at Desir Group, I was in the industry, as they say. I had 2 points of contact. I was a hospital administrator, got my degree at University of Michigan in health management and policy, and was with the Trinity System and SUNY, and then also worked for the American Hospital Association in the Institute for Diversity and Health Equity. So try to bring that combination of experience as an administrator, and then also trying to continue to work together with our healthcare organizations to bring in diversity and equity in the leadership team and in the services that they provide. So really great to be here and look forward to a lively discussion.
Great. Thank you, Nisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Vituro. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to Lisa and Cindy for the opportunity. I'm an executive director with Russell Reynolds Associates. We are a retained search firm, global, 47 offices worldwide. And I co-lead the Midwest healthcare practice out of the Chicago office. So my practice focuses on recruiting physician executives and other leaders for academic medicine, integrated delivery networks, payers, associations, kind of across the spectrum of healthcare services. I have a little bit of a combined background, just like Nisa. So professional services and industry. Prior to joining Russell Reynolds, I was part of the leadership team at Cincinnati Children's Hospital for 13 years. I was the vice president of strategy there. And then before I joined before I joined Children's, I was with Deloitte Consulting for 7 years. And all of my consulting clients were academic medical centers and medical schools. So sometimes I hope I bring a little more inside baseball into the roles that I recruit for than I otherwise might.
My name is Ken Rich. I've certainly enjoyed hearing the other panelists. That's an honor to be joining them today. Bluesteps and AESC has been a part of my life for a while, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to join Cindy and Lisa and to give you some of our background and hopefully some friendly advice. First of all, I'm very partial to Yale. I spent quite a bit of time interviewing candidates from Yale back 25 years ago. So I became a fan of the School of Management at that time. We looked at Wharton and Columbia and NYU and selected Yale as where we wanted to recruit from. So I was always impressed. My son spent 10 years at Yale studying for 4 degrees, and the last degree he received was as a lawyer. He got his JD there. In terms of my background, I spent the first 25 years of my 38 years in search covering the financial services community. And over the last 13 years, all at Boyden, I might say, I have been focused beyond financial services. I continue to focus on asset management and the hedge fund industry and also investment banking, which is where I've come from. My background prior to search was corporate finance and M&A. Spent 14 years doing that, and I certainly hope that some of my experience can help some of you today as you ask questions about the profession.
Fabulous. So I really wanted to, again, say thank you to all of our panelists. And I wanted to highlight, if you are just joining us and you maybe haven't had a chance to look at our panelists' bios and understand how their firms might be different with different focuses. Even though our panelists have a certain focus area, their firms are larger and bigger than just this focus area or this particular expertise. So please take the time to do your research, not only on our panelists and their varied and vibrant backgrounds, but also to know where they're working, so that you will better be able to connect with them and understand how you can work really effectively with them. Kicking it off, right, today, the first question for many people is, what is executive search? And we spoke amongst ourselves and decided that since Ken might have done this a little bit longer than the rest, that Ken is going to start off with this question. And again, I'll invite, we have panelists that are answering specific questions, and where there's additional information you want to add in, a new idea that maybe is something that will create color or is special or distinct for your particular industry focus area, please, other panelists, to chime in as you see fit. But right now, off the top, what is executive search, Ken? Could you kind of help us to understand why we're all here?
Well, I'm going to follow your lead, Cindy, and tell you what executive search is not. First of all, it is not basically a one-way street. We work with our candidates and we work with our clients, and we represent clients in finding the best candidates for their organizations. Executive search basically comes in several different shapes and sizes. One is called retained search. Retained executive search is what the AESC is focused on in terms of the way in which search is actually done. I would encourage everybody on this call basically to look at Bluesteps AESC. They put together something which I find is incredible in terms of the differences between the retained executive search business as well as the contingency business. It's very, very helpful to see that. I'm not going to give you the 5-minute description on that because you can read it, but I'm going to tell you basically from your vantage point, the most important thing is to know how to work with executive search firms. And the problem is that a lot of people really don't know the difference between the two, and the third being the talent acquisition people. We all work for the same purpose, to find the right candidates for our clients. The difference is that the retained executive search, as they say, you're only as good as your last search. So our responsibility or connection with our candidates doesn't end at the end of the search process. In some ways, it just begins. We help with the onboarding. We also work with candidates over a period of 3, 6, 9, 12 months. We continue to stay in touch to see how they're doing, to help them to be successful in the jobs that they've been selected for. We also spend a lot of time with the clients up front before the search actually starts, getting to really understand the nuances, what's expected and what's important, and to understand the corporate culture so that we can find people that fit that particular organization. So we are looking out for your best interest. We want to make sure you don't join the wrong company and that the client doesn't hire the wrong individual. I would say that contingency firms have a different focus in the sense that they're trying to get candidates as quickly as possible because they're not in an exclusive relationship. They don't have the same warranty that we have. We guarantee that the candidates will be successful, and if they're not, we'll replace them without charging additional fee if this happens over the first year. So that's an important characteristic. The other thing about it, people have a misconception about search. A lot of people think we're talent agents, like we're sports agents. That's not who we are. We work for clients, and we're finding the best candidates for them. The other misconception is that everybody in search failed at something else, and now we got stuck in search, and here we are. That's absolutely not true. Most of the people that are coming into search have had very, very successful careers as executives or in the management consulting industry, which a lot of people have as a background, which is very helpful in the search practice. And so it's important to appreciate that you can benefit from talking to search professionals and getting a sense of what they've accomplished. what they've done that worked for them, and also the pitfalls, what they find that did not work and does not work in the business world.
That's really helpful, Ken. And I appreciate that reminder that you're people and you have interests and things that you've done outside of search. So those are really wonderful reasons, again, why you want to look at people's bios, LinkedIn profiles, what are people posting, so that you can get to know the flavor of the person. And it makes it easier for you to connect with them when you do reach out. Moving on, Kathy, I think you're going to take the lead on this one. We really want to understand what do candidates need to consider now that we know what executive search is and what you guys are doing, a little bit what you're looking for. What should we consider before reaching out to you, recognizing, again, different specializations, et cetera, and what are you looking for in terms of a prepared candidate? So I'll just stop talking and let you take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Cindy. Well, I think, the first and most important thing is a continuation of what we just discussed, which is this thought that, we are people. Most recruiters have a specialty. Either it's an industry they focus in or a set of functional roles. So, for example, HR or tech, or it might be a combination of those things. All of our websites are pretty clear about what our specific interest areas are. And so you really only want to reach out to the folks who are working and recruiting candidates for your slice of the industry. It's important to think about what you're asking of them. And if you really are at the point that you are job seeking, you want to be that targeted. If you're looking for someone who would give you feedback, someone you want to have a more general discussion with, you could try someone that merely has a personal connection to you or a Yale connection, for example. But really in the job search process, you want to be targeting the individuals who are recruiting for the roles that you are most interested in, which requires you to be in a position to talk about what it is that you want to do and to bring your story forward in a really sort of compelling and coherent way, and to kind of have your house in order with respect to how you describe both who you are and where you'd like to go. I'd love to give my fellow panelists the opportunity to add to that.
I think there's also different sizes of firms. So when you, in addition, so there's small boutique firms, some of who may have a little more time. You're very, very large firms. So, look at the different sizes of firms. And as Kathy said, also people have, in addition to industries, there could be supply chain, there can be, as Scott is in, sustainability, obviously HR and IT. So, think about where you're going in terms of your own specialty, not only industry, but also if you've also begun to think about within that industry, where you may want to focus. So that's another thing to think about when you're reaching out to search consultants.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would add, and it's closely related with what's been said already, homework on the part of the candidate, in my mind, is really key. And so asking yourself, and maybe even writing it down in an elevator pitch format, what type of company do I think I will thrive in? What cultural impact do I want to have? What type of role do I want to have? That, frankly, what kind of pivotal experiences and leadership skills can I bring? And so we continue to see a trend, particularly in sustainability, where there's an importance for the company's purpose and mission to align to the individuals, and that's a top priority. So I would say, start there, for example. The more we understand all those key elements, the better we can partner together. For us, the end game is not just the transaction of placing a candidate, it's about making sure that there's a fit for long-term success and for a candidate and for the client. But yeah, to the point that has been made earlier, there's nothing worse than getting, an outreach from a candidate that just clearly hasn't done their homework on where, my specific specialization is. And I can't really be helpful if there isn't work done on the part of the candidate beforehand.
I was just going to say, research is critical, and be proactive, and don't be afraid to this is not your last job. You're going to have an opportunity to progress through your career path.
Yeah, we get, especially in this climate of a zillion emails with people that don't have any relevancy to what we do. And I don't even look at them. So,
Yeah.
so if you're
And
sending
I
an email to someone that is in no, to a search consultant has no industry expertise in the area, and you're just sending an email, most likely it's not going to get any attention.
And
Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
sorry, that's been my experience as well, Lisa. I feel like I'm buried in some of those messages, but
Yeah.
I really love Scott's sort of laying out the things you need to think through, because we can be most helpful to you when you're targeting your outreach to someone who is working in that industry or recruits for that functional area. And then you really give us the 6 bullets to then convey what your sort of value add is to our colleagues, because we only have so many searches at a time. The likelihood that we individually would have the right search for you is fairly low, but the benefit is that we would be able to network with our colleagues around what you're looking for. And if we can say, here's what they bring to the table, here's what they've done, here's what they'd like to do, here's the kind of company they're looking for, and here are the roles, then people immediately, we can blast our colleagues and they can immediately say, oh, I have a role that meets those specs, let me give that person a call. But if it's not that clear, it can be hard for us. We can send your resume or upload it to our database, we can send it to our colleagues, but they won't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I was going to add is, think about your audience, not only in terms of the experience or the functional expertise, but it could be simply you have a connection with them because they're an alumni from Yale, and you want to, enlist their help and thoughts on advice, or maybe you share a similar interest or connectivity on a nonprofit or group. But again, just knowing and having more of a tight purpose on why you're reaching out and what the ask is critical for that first connectivity with the executive search consultant.
Beautiful. And if I can just piggyback on that one, small asks are easier to say yes to. Discreet asks, where you're building trust and rapport, and then you can have another longer conversation later once you're already, kind of in good graces. All wonderful advice. I wanted to also kind of just highlight that piece that Scott said about mission. I talk to people all the time that say, I'm looking for, a mission-driven organization. All organizations have missions. Some of them just don't align at all with what yours might be. So, Scott's advice to know what your, organization is going to look like and the type of impact you're going to make, again, hugely helpful for this group of people to be able to help you. Moving on, I wanted to kind of shift into the next section of our work. How does executive search, first of all, fit into an overall search strategy? If I find the right person, can I just rely on you to help me to find the job? Or, really, how do I want to think about this as part of my overall career strategy, even if we look at it beyond a specific job, search today?
Well, I think that this is one strategy in your whole career planning. And I think as well, in terms of your whole career planning, you've got to think long term in terms of building relationships. So you want to, within this, search consultant, as some people have said, and I think as Scott said a minute ago about, and Cindy said, building that initial trust, beginning to build that trust is really important as you begin to work with the executive consultant and the network of that. So being able to have a cadre, and you may have more than one. I know people that have identified individuals in probably all the firms that we work with, and because we all have different relationships, so you don't feel like you could just, let me just have one loyalty to one person in one firm. So, as we've all said, take your time to do your research to identify the people, and this should be one of your strategies as you continue to build your professional network. And it's all about building your professional network so that you have a cadre of people that know what you want and can be helpful in that throughout your career, just like working with the alumni from Yale, just like working, with individuals you went to college with. It's all a part of building your long-term network in terms of working with executive search consultants. I think that's one of the beginning strategies, to think about this as a part of your longer term career strategy network.
Anyone else want to add in on this one? Okay, if not, I'm really curious. So I did my research. I identified, the right recruiters to reach out to for the things that I'm interested in. What do I need to be prepared with before I reach out? Resume, things like that. What are you looking for a well-prepared candidate that makes an effective reach out, or they're ready to take another step with you?
Yeah, I think some of us have brought that up, already. Obviously, you definitely have to have your resume, and don't ask us to like review your resume on our first call with you. and so get to know us a little bit before you ask us for a service as like that. But you make sure that your bio, your LinkedIn, as Scott and others have said, you've got to articulate what are your skills, what are you bringing in, and skills in both in terms of soft skills and in terms of leadership. Where have you telling, what story are you telling? What accomplishments have you had? What successes? Even if they're small, as others have said, what added value that you can articulate to me that I can share with my colleagues? And so, having that, as well as, you could have a short bio. If someone doesn't want to read your resume, try to prepare a short bio that highlights some of your major accomplishments that are, and think about how you are unique. Everyone is looking for an opportunity, but what is your unique skills, expertise, and experience that sets you apart, that you want to be able to share with executive recruiters?
I agree with those points. And I would just add, I like people who know who they are, who have good self-insight, and who are unafraid to show their vulnerability. I also like people who have connected with other people in the industry that they're interested in, because those are the people that we probably already know and we've already used as sources. And if they're known to the sources, that's really the best way to get us to think well of them, because that's a way of having somebody do a soft reference check on them.
And agree 100% with all of that. I think from a very practical, tactical standpoint, the resume is critical. I would also say your LinkedIn profile should be updated, it should be complete, and it should be consistent with what's in your resume. Mm-hmm. I think, we go from call to call to call on multiple searches, and even if I have your resume, I might not have a minute to pull it up and really read it. I'm going to go as a shortcut to LinkedIn. And if it turns out that you've left a role that's still on LinkedIn, or you have made a change, or I'm missing something big, it can really cause a disconnect in the conversation. So, LinkedIn is such a currency for just for connections, but also in terms of how we do our research and we seek candidates, so that not filling that picture in really can do you a disservice. You really might get passed over because you're not out there in the right sort of public way.
The only thing that I would add is, think about exemplifying your readiness for a role today. No one could have predicted the pandemic and the effects on a variety of different sectors and businesses. And while there are many great leaders on paper, some were not experienced in crisis management or great in making decisive action, or bringing a capability around speed and pace and partnering, just to name a few. So again, I encourage you all to think about crafting your stories that shows how you show up as a leader in the, post-pandemic world.
Beautiful. These are really actionable and very clear suggestions. Two things I just wanted to build on. When Kathy talks about a complete LinkedIn profile, I want to remind people that when LinkedIn came into existence in, I think, 2003, it really was an online resume, and that's what it was about. Today, it is so much more. It's a platform for you to share your brand and find these points of connection with companies you might be interested in, recruiters that you're looking to speak to. So the more you can share of yourself in a professional business way, of course, makes it a lot easier for these guys to look at your profile and say, yes, this is a call I'd like to take. So please make it easy for them to say yes by taking that time to think about what might be important. The next question I wanted to—
Let me just mention one thing, Cindy. Not everyone's fully baked. And sometimes I talk to people that, like, as Ken said, that are willing to be vulnerable, that are willing to say, I tried banking and it just wasn't for me. So I went back to the Yale School of Management, and now I want to go into healthcare, or other personal journeys in a very short. So don't, none of us are perfect and none of us are fully baked. We're always all on a journey, and be willing to be open and, not a long dialogue, but be willing to share a little bit about and be vulnerable about your career, so that you begin to create that connection with the search consultant.
That's beautiful. I know there's a lot of questions about pivoting, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Fabulous. You mentioned, kind of what you might have done that you didn't really like. You learned skills there. Scott, you brought up skills a minute ago. That would be something that I'd love to hear from all of you about, as you have different focus areas in the world that we live in today, in an ongoing pandemic with, who knows what the next unexpected crisis is going to be. We've had supply chain issues, healthcare, so many issues that leaders and organizations have had to deal with. What are the skills that are in demand that are, kind of non-negotiable from your perspective, that we're really looking for in leaders, that may not be the traditional resume bullet points that people would have thought about as accomplishments in the past? What do you want to make sure that we're thoughtful about, we have stories about, and that we're sharing proactively with you?
Well, our experience certainly in the last 2 years, but I think, for many years, has been that for sort of top leadership roles, there's no question that there will be a question and there will be a discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And, what people really don't want to hear is your personal story about your diverse friend group, right? What they're really looking for are the things that you've done to sort of structurally advance your organizations and in your previous roles on diversity, equity, and inclusion, policies that you've helped establish, programs that you've helped set up, even, groups that you've been part of facilitating or that you've participated in that are advancing that cause. I've had candidates, Cindy asked us to tell a couple of little war stories, and I've had candidates who have answered the question about, how have you advanced DE&I in your organization? I've had folks who've said, well, I live in Miami, it's very diverse, I don't need to worry about it. Wrong answer. We also have folks who talk about, an individual that they work with that they've helped promote who happens to have a diverse background. Wrong answer. Organizations are really looking for people who can think at a systems level and who are interested in, understand that advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion is a system problem, not I'm nice to everyone kind of a problem, and something that if you're thinking about a higher level role, you will be asked about. And I think it's something that's important to think through how you're going to answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even to couple with that, given all that's happened, is people. How have you managed people in a very fluid environment, in terms of people are struggling with, virtual, non-virtual, a blend, as a leader, how have you been able to, in your own jobs, keep a team together in a virtual environment? How have you supported, in the healthcare, how have you supported your employees with different time off, different other ways to fill their bucket, as they say? How have you, there's staffing problems in all industries. How have you been able to creatively think about retooling any employees to be able to do different tasks? And then also, continuing to, what do you do personally? Do you bring lunch to your team members that are working in the midnight shift? Are you doing other ways to continue to show value and keep your employee engagement scores, and being able to articulate what those employee engagement scores are and what you've done to continue to build them in a very dynamic environment is really critical.
Yeah, I just, oh, Ken, do you want to go?
No, go right ahead. I'll go after you, Scott.
I'll keep it short.
So will I.
Kathy and Lisa's comments made me go back to partially what we began the conversation with, which was misconceptions around the mission of an executive recruiter. And our work, I hope you're hearing it collectively from all of us, it goes way beyond just placing people in jobs. And so for our firm, while the goal is to enable clients to find the world's best leaders, we do that through building diverse, inclusive cultures and really help them transform their teams to ultimately achieve new levels of performance, which is, approach that is very different than being just a placement agent. So again, knowing what your connectivity with and opportunity with in terms of building diverse and inclusive cultures is really key as you think through your careers. The one thing that I will add on, just when we're talking about today's business environment and skills and capabilities, just as an example to add on here, we saw that the share of roles just within financial services firms were seeking to fill new roles, these are new, rose from 39% to almost 60%. And sometimes these roles for leaders of new businesses, other times they were existing businesses, but there's an emphasis on newly important mixes, right? Just as a quick example, combining, sales, marketing, product expertise into a chief commercial officer role. But either way, companies across industries are putting an increased emphasis on finding and developing leaders who not only focus on results, but are agile, they're empathetic, they're inclusive, they're able to problem solve in new ways. In other words, they're often filling new roles with new kinds of leaders.
I was just going to add to that. The way we would break it down at Boyden is we would look at 3 different buckets in terms of leadership. One would be leading an organization. And there we're talking about providing strategy and strategic orientation and aligning the organization to work together. The second area would be leading people, and there you're empowering people. You're giving them the opportunity to take responsibility. And the most important perhaps is leading yourself. And that falls into being able to understand who you are, being able to have good decision, being decisive, being current, and being entrepreneurial in terms of your spirit, but also being open-minded and wanting to hear other points of view.
Great. This is such helpful perspective that you're sharing, and I just wanted to again highlight, not that it's not all important, but Scott's point about the fact that the jobs that we're hiring for today didn't maybe exist a year ago or 5 years ago. So we can't come into search so focused on this is what the job is going to look like, this is what I'm going to do, because that may not be what's needed or what companies value today. So super helpful to engage with even you guys in this process of understanding needs and really articulating those stories that can kind of shared so specifically around leadership that shows your agility to be able to meet these new needs. Super helpful. Thank you all on this. Shifting now into the last bit of kind of questions that we talked about previously, working with you, I'd love to kind of have you share at a high level pros and cons. What does an ideal candidate look like from a recruiter perspective? And then kind of moving on from that, what are ways to be attractive to and attracted by recruiters? Do you want to dive into an ideal candidate for you, Scott?
This is such a hard question, honestly. Because it can be situationally based for the company and for the role, but I would continue to press on the importance of candidates doing their homework, right? I mean, there's no substitute for a candidate really being curious and understanding, the role, the experiences needed, the competencies needed for the role, And then most importantly, potentially, the self-awareness of what you're going to bring and what you're not. There's no such thing as a perfect candidate on any of our searches that we work on. There will always be trade-offs needed. And so trade-offs need to be made on the part of our clients. And so really part of your job as the perfect candidate is to understand what are the must-haves in this role? What are the strongly preferreds? What are the nice-to-haves that the company is looking for? And then how do I fit into that? And do I want to fit into that? So that's what I would say about that very tricky question.
From a process standpoint, I agree with Scott 100%. You have to know yourself and you have to know sort of where you fit and what you bring. From a process standpoint, it's really blocking and tackling and just thinking about, being respectful of the process and respectful of time. We are in a fairly dynamic business. And so, if we reach out to you about a specific opportunity or we have a conversation that's about an opportunity, we are hopeful that you will be responsive. Don't be surprised if someone from a search firm reaches out to you and there's a mutual interest in a role, they're going to want you on your calendar the next day. I mean, this is not a like, oh, I'll interview in a couple of weeks kind of situation. We really move quickly, and we appreciate when prospective candidates can move quickly with us. And I think, it's helpful to just think about sort of the process and being respectful of our time, being respectful of our clients. We are looking to find the very best talent to introduce to our clients. That's our ultimate goal. And so you need to have done all the homework. You need to be prepared. And then, to the extent that you, for example, schedule an interview, we schedule an interview for you with a client, you have to show up. Right. And you have to be prepared. That makes everyone look good. If that's not the case, then we would be not necessarily excited to work with you again. And Cindy asked for example, so I'll give you just a quick example. We had someone lined up for a very senior role at a health system. They canceled their interview with the chief operating officer and a big chunk of the C-suite and probably the largest health system in New Jersey about 2 hours before the meeting. And the justification was, I just have thought through it and realized it's not the right role for me. That didn't cover anybody in glory, right? That person didn't look good. We didn't look good because we obviously brought a candidate forward who was not fully engaged. And that stuff comes around. So I've recently found out that individual, very talented person, by the way, that individual is going to be the victim of a reorganization. They're going to be out at their current company, and a mutual, person in our network has reached out to me to say, hey, can you look out for this guy? And I had to come back and say, listen, I had this experience and we wouldn't try that person again. So these process elements, in a lot of ways, we're running a process here, and these processes are really important. So if you make a commitment, if you show up, it's really important that you do show up and that you follow through on the things that are part of the process.
Yeah, I totally reiterate what Kathy says, and that's happening more and more in this environment because it is a candidate market. And so you'll distinguish yourselves by being responsive, keeping your word, and being, even respectful of our time. So, don't say you need to speak to us at 8 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning. Try to show some flexibility and not rigidity when kind of working with us. And if you haven't done a lot of interviewing on Zoom, you need to practice. And it's very different than being in person. It's harder to have connection, especially if there's about 10 or 12 people that you're interviewing with. So really take the time to practice, get some feedback, do a Zoom with a few of your friends, so that you're also comfortable in exuding that sense of confidence, in making connections when you're in a virtual setting. I think is really important. So that's a couple tips.
I agree with everybody's comments that they've made. I would just add this to it. I'm available 24/7, but I set a high bar for the candidates. And so I, first of all, spend the 30 minutes talking about the position, giving them a sense of what to expect. And then I ask them to come back to me with their idea of why they fit the job with a written explanation. After that, I spend 2 hours with them on the phone. I go into every aspect. The first hour is about their background. The second really is to study the job fit and the leadership qualities. And then we have a Zoom call. That's after everything else. And that obviously gives me a chance to get to see how they perform and how they react to my questions, and also gives them a chance to ask questions, because up till then it's been a little bit one-way street, me getting to know them. But the important thing is the investment of time. And if they're not willing to invest time in the process, then it's not going to work to their benefit.
Nice. And your process, Ken, might be very different than other people's process, which is also a really important reason to know who you're talking to and what they expect, so that you're ready for what's coming, and that you are available to build that trust and rapport.
Yeah, and it's a very good point, Cindy. You know, some of us have associates that will make the first outreach to a potential candidate, and if you turn that associate off by you know, not being engaged in the way you should be engaged, or not following through on an appointment, then you won't get to us. So make sure that everyone along the way that you're friendly to. The other thing to think about, sometimes people make a mistake when they go on site, is treating that assistant or that secretary of the CEO badly.
That's a mistake.
And so everyone you encounter, you have to be friendly and you have to be respectful, and because that assistant will tell that CEO, you know, how you treated them, and so be mindful of that you have to treat everyone along the way with respect, and be friendly.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a critical point you just made about the assistant. Everybody you meet along the way has an opportunity to have an input about your about how people think about you in that company.
Before we started this discussion, I was on a call with a CEO client on an update call. The assistant's feedback was paramount to the process. So right. it happened, you know, 45 minutes ago.
Happens every day.
Yep, indeed. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and their Zoom camera was going in and out of focus, and they weren't aware of it. So that was something else. Check your sound and your lighting when we're talking about these. If this is our first impression, if you're out of focus in a camera, that's gonna impact things as well. So always double check all of those important elements as well. I'm conscious of our time. This has been a really phenomenal conversation, and I do have some questions that are coming up. But before we go there, I wanted to hear from each of you about the ideal initial contact. So people probably are on the call right now saying, I really, you know, I have something I'd like to talk to Kathy about, or I'd really like to talk to Nisa, and they're thinking about making that initial contact, and they don't know you yet. Maybe they don't have any, you know, direct connection. How do you want to hear from people, and what do you expect in a quick request for a meeting that you'll say yes to? I'd love to hear, you know, kind of from all of you about that. But you know, perhaps Nisa, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you said I was on the webinar with the Yale School of Management, that's a great way for me to respond to you.
Perfect answer.
So, and it's also best to contact us when you're not looking for a job. So, you know, the Yale School of Management, I was on the webinar. I appreciate what you said. You know, do you have, you know, 15 minutes to, you know, thinking about, you know, maybe I'm looking at several different health organizations. You know, do you begin to think of, just begin that connection, and take not a very long period of time to say, you know, will you touch base with me for about 15 minutes? I'm thinking about, you know, X, Y, Z, and want your quick thoughts.
Nice. Who else wants to add to that? Any other things you'd like?
I think it was perfectly stated for this group, but I also think that if you if time passes and you don't think this is the right forum just to reach out to the 3 or 4 of us, I think at that point you're reaching out to people who were not on the call, who were not panelists in essence, and you're basically finding some commonality. You're going on LinkedIn and you're seeing who else they know that you're connected to, and if that person you feel is reflective of who you are and what you stand for, it may very well be, may resonate with that other person as well.
Bringing it back to research. What else? Kathy, do you have a point of view on an ideal connection?
I think that Ken and Nisa really nailed it.
Okay. All right, so let me bring another question in, and this is one actually from the audience. How far out should a candidate be reaching out to you to start cultivating a relationship? They may or may not be looking for something today. What's too early, if there is such a thing?
I don't think it's ever too early. I think you need to basically to develop trust and develop a relationship takes time. And again, if you have connections that are connected to the party you're trying to connect with, that takes time, and it looks better when you're not desperate.
Ken's mentioned two-way street a number of times, right? And building that relationship should be a two-way street. And again, the longer connectivity and the longer time you've had in building rapport with someone. For me, I really want to get to know our candidates in terms of what they're going to be right for, but also what do they want to get called on, so that I'm not reaching out to them all the time on things that just don't make sense. That's what I might care about. Or I'd love to hear from them as things get updated with their career. But the other part too is you all can be so valuable for us in terms of suggesting new connections with great talent within your own network. Or if there's a search that's being conducted at your company and you have a good trust-based relationship with the executive recruiter, reach out to them and pick their brain on, hey, are you the right person, or is there someone within your organization? That's the way you build a two-way street, in my opinion. And again, to the points that have been made, it starts now and it lasts many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're just coming out of an MBA program. You've got some great books you've read, some great articles. If someone says, hey, this is a great, great article, and just sends it and doesn't even ask anything at that particular time after I've established some relationship, continue to add value, as Scott said, so that it becomes a two-way street. I was talking to a candidate the other night. I hadn't talked to her in a long time, and she told me, well, I want to look at an opportunity, but I don't want to move for a year. My daughter just left for college. I kind of want to wait a few months. So understanding her time frame, is helpful to me. So I'm not going to call her for something I need in the next, 4 to 6 months. I'll realize that I'll call her, more towards the end of the year. So, as people have said, understand and share what you can so that we can be your best advocates, but also give us resources that we can continue to grow ourselves, because we're also always in learning mode, because we're also trying to consult and partner with our clients. So we're always trying to be consultants to our clients. So whatever information you can provide is also beneficial.
That's fabulous. I love the idea of being in dialogue. So you might bring an opportunity to a candidate that's not quite right, and to be able to have the conversation about, here's what I like about this opportunity, and here's where I think it's not a great fit, is going to make it much easier for you to call them in the future with that follow-up of, I think I know someone for whom this might be great. You're gonna, not leave disappointed that it wasn't a good call with this person, but delighted that you have potentially a new connection. That's great. I have a question. I'm going to kind of combine two questions that I've seen come through because I'm conscious of our time, and I want to make sure we get to an opportunity for you all to share quick tips with us in a few minutes. In terms of preparing for a role, there might be a gap, for example, in prior experience, or someone who's looking specifically to make a mid-career pivot. What suggestions do you have for those folks who are looking to do something different from what they've done? This is so important to so many of our students and alumni, because that's why they came here, because they want to do something different. Who wants to take point on this one?
I think just be ready. The important thing is, again, being vulnerable is fine, but you want to basically give people an understanding of who you are and why you're doing something. And if you've had a gap, or if you've had a time that you've taken off, that can be explained. I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I mean, people were trying to fudge their resumes and figuring out, because you were held accountable if you had a gap. People thought, oh, that was bad. I think people recognize this with the pandemic and other reasons, but they recognize that these are different times. And you basically need to be honest and give people, if you want to develop trust with somebody, you want people to respect you, you've got to be honest with them. And once you're honest with them, then let it, if it was meant to be, it's fine. If it doesn't work for that particular organization, the culture doesn't allow that, then that's fine, you move on. You don't want to join an organization that's not right for you.
And think about skills, oftentimes, even if you've had a gap, you have some skills that you've acquired along the way that are transferable if you're trying to switch industries or being a mid-career. So think about the skills and expertise and then what you've done to continue to build those, even if you've had a gap. And those can be done in volunteer organizations. Those can be done in other mechanisms that you continue, to build careers. I was talking with a physician and he had a gap, but he decided to go and help do vaccines and help vaccine distribution and some of the supply chain. So, think about what you're doing and how those skills can be transferable as you continue to look for new opportunities.
So this is true for people who have a gap in employment, but also who have a non-traditional path to the role they're looking for, really. And I think, Scott, you said it earlier, showing people that you're ready for the role today because you understand the role, you understand the requisite skills, and that you're bringing them and ready to kind of do the work.
Yeah, and just a comment. I mean, we're in the middle of the Great Resignation. So if you have a gap in employment, you're in very good company right now overall. And if I just put on my Silicon Valley hat on, which is where I'm based and where I do most of my work, it's not uncommon for people to pivot from industry to industry, especially if they've gone through an MBA program. And the advice that I would give is always take the long view with your career, and sometimes to ultimately get into the industry that you want to get to or pivot to the function that you want to excel in, you have to take a step back or a step sideways to make that step forward. So, I give the example many times to folks who say, I want to be a CFO tomorrow. Great. But have you thought about going and being a director of finance or a VP of finance at an academy company, learning under a phenomenal mentor who's a best-in-class CFO, and doing that for a little bit of time before you make that step forward? So that's, again, that would be my advice. Sometimes don't be afraid to make the step back or sidestep to make the step forward.
I think, the most important thing is understanding, knowing yourself, right? Sort of to Ken's points about being able to explain, why did I participate in the Great Resignation, or why do I want to make this pivot and make it authentic? I think you really, especially if you have a gap that you need to explain, or you've recently left a role, it's really important that you be crisp about it and why, but in a way that doesn't disparage your former employer. I asked someone yesterday who left an EVP role at a huge health plan, so tell me why you left. And he said, well, do you want the long story or the short story? And I thought, oh, wow, I think I just learned what I need to know, which is that it wasn't a good departure. And, in our firm, if you are not working and you're not coming out of an MBA program, of course, we will ask to speak with your last supervisor. So it's important that, those connections are still there. It's important that you can talk about your departure in a way that makes sense and is authentic, but doesn't drag whatever that situation is through the mud. Even if, that's your personal feeling about it, you have to stay professional.
So that's a great reminder that careers are long and the world is small, and to not burn bridges.
There you go.
I'd love to hear very quickly from each of you. My quick tip is, so that if we remember one thing from your talk today, what is that one thing? Ken, do you want to kick us off with my quick tip?
Okay, my quick tip is, when you get an opportunity to do an interview, do not celebrate. That is not the reason to celebrate, but follow the 4 Ps. 4 Ps. First, preparation. Be prepared. Second, show passion. Third, show your personality. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And last, be patient. It takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Fabulous. Thank you. Nisa, my quick tip?
My quick tip, Nisa Dillon Brown. be thoughtful, be resourceful, do your research. As Ken said, be authentic, and be open to new opportunities and think long term.
Fabulous. Thank you. Kathy, my quick tip.
Sure. My quick tip is that really maintaining and cultivating your networks is one of the most important things that you can do. You know, at the beginning of the search, an opportunity might come your way because of a connection that you have. In fact, that's really most likely where it's going to come from. And then at the end of a search, once you're in a process, we will take professional references. We are going to ask you to give us the names of people that we can talk to that you've worked for, worked with, and who've worked for you. And you want to make sure that you know who those folks are, who's in your corner. It'll take a team to jump into one of these executive roles.
Thank you. Scott, my quick tip.
My quick tip is pick what you want to do based on the impact that you think you can have. There's a number of startups around here that claim to be helping the world, but they're not. They're actually some app that doesn't do anything useful at all, and it's often wasting people's time. Do something useful. And if you can't find it in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I think you need some good justification. And I'm not saying everything is in there, but you really need to be asking your question right now about whether or not you're doing something useful in the world, because there is a huge value proposition about adding to positive impact, whether it be environmental or social in the world.
I don't think we could have ended this for the Yale School of Management, whose mission is educating leaders for business and society, any better. So with that, I'm going to actually hand it back over to Lisa to wrap us up and take us home. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Lisa?
Thanks, Cindy, and thank you to our excellent panel. I think we've all learned a lot today and found the discussion really informative, and hopefully everyone on the call today is ready to start building their 2022 career plans with the advice that we've been equipped with today. So just to round off the session, I just wanted to let everyone know you will shortly be receiving an email which will contain a link to the recording so you can listen back. Also, Bluesteps is extending a special offer to Yale School of Management students and alumni. So with the code Yale SOM 30, you can purchase Bluesteps membership with a 30% discount. If you do have any unanswered questions, either for our panel today or whether you want to learn more about Bluesteps, you can contact me directly at lwales@aesc.org. And with that, I think that concludes today's session. You may now disconnect. Thank you.